Hi guys, how's it going? Ivano here, and after a couple of weeks of radio silence, Broadsword has finally said hi. So there was this post yesterday from Rob Denton, president of Broadsword. I'm not gonna read it to you, I'm sure you guys can all read for yourselves. I'll post a link in the description of this video, but the most important point is basically that yes, they will continue SWTOR in the future, there will be interesting updates, but there really were no specifics on what they're planning. The only thing that we know is that on October 18th, next Wednesday, there will be a live stream covering some of the things that are coming in 7.4. So I guess stay tuned for that. But since Broadsword is not really telling us anything about the roadmap past 7.4, I guess this is going to be a short rant video where I just stand here on my stronghold and talk a little bit about what I would like to see and what I think that they should change in order to make the game more enjoyable from a PvPer's perspective, of course. So what PvP changes do I want to see in the future? And I think the main problem that PvP has currently at the moment is that there are simply not enough people playing. So how do you solve that? Well, you give people more reasons to play. And why do people play PvP in video games such as this one? Well, I guess there's a couple of reasons. First and most importantly, of course, games are supposed to be fun. They can also be a way of socializing with other people. Reason number two, I guess, is everything related to competition, which is important, especially for PvP and has been lacking recently. And then some people play for rewards. But let's stay with point number one, how to make PvP more fun. And I know a topic of discussion that always comes up at the forums, of course, is that premates are ruining PvP. And if you've watched my latest video, then you will know my opinion on that. I think that actually premates itself are not ruining PvP. But when people are complaining about premates, what they're actually complaining about is that matchmaking is not working. Nevertheless, I'm not going to repeat the whole discussion in this video. I think some of the issues that we clearly see with PvP currently are that 8-man premates are really not working for fair matchmaking in the current scenario. So maybe they could make it that either they reduce the premate size back to 4 people, maybe 3, I don't know what is the right number, but reduce the premates to make it a little bit easier on solo players. Also, what I think they should do is limit it to 1 support class per team. Like, there's really no reason to have 4 tanks on one side in the war zone or have 3 healers on one team. I think it's just unfun and not balanced. And then when it comes to queue changes to make that more fun, why not bring back solo queue arena? Because particularly when it comes to arena, I think matching solo people against 4-man premates doesn't really make a lot of sense there. So for arenas, I would either just make it solo queue or maybe just limit the premates to 2 men instead of 4. Then to make PvP more fun, a big thing for me also are balance changes, of course. And I've talked about which classes are OP in my latest tier lists. But a big thing for me that they really need to do, because it kind of just ruins war zones and makes them not enjoyable for me personally, is nerfing tanks. And when I talk about nerfing tanks, I mean, yes, the queue changes. There is no reason that you should be able to queue with a premate that has 3 tanks and a healer. That just seems unfun. But why are people queuing as 3 tanks? Well, it's because tanks are very strong and they don't die as fast as DPS, but they still can put out some similar damage numbers. So my proposals nerf the damage of tanks, particularly the skank tank builds. They are too strong. And then you can also think about nerfing guard, because 50% in the game's first iteration, where a lot of classes didn't have overpowered cooldowns like they have now, was maybe a fun mechanic. But nowadays, I think if guard would be nerfed to, let's say, 30%, it would still be good. Then balance-wise, they really need to nerf madness. And finally, for real, I think the most overpowered things about madness are its self-healing, so they should properly nerf that. And also, this goes for all sorcerers, I really find the overload route to be one of the most overpowered things in the game. Just the cooldown is shorter than other classes' routes. It's a 5-second base duration for the route. It's AoE. It's too strong. Nerf that shit. Then there's a couple of tacticals I would nerf. I think 2 cloaks is too strong. So ideally remove that tactical and then buff assassins DPS. I'm not saying buff their burst is really good. But 2 cloaks makes them too strong. It makes it so if the Sin knows what they're doing, you're never going to cap Hypergate against 2 Sins. You're never going to cap Voidstar. And it just makes the game unfun. So remove that tactical. Same thing for T0 R0. I think it's also overpowered. So maybe you don't have to remove it, but maybe you should nerf it because no other class gets close to 180k crit. And it also pigeonholes engineering snipers into this big burst playstyle, whereas the class initially was more of an AoE control and of zone control class. So maybe if they nerf the burst, then they can buff something else, like, I don't know, make the orbital strike do damage again or something. Next thing I would nerf is cut to pieces and then buff juggernauts to compensate, because cut to pieces is just the most broken thing that's probably ever been in the game. So yeah, give the Vengeance Juggernauts another tactical, maybe buff the single target one, or buff them someplace else, but cut to pieces I think also is too overpowered. And in general, I mean, I'm not gonna go over all the balance changes. Yes, some weak classes could be buffed. You can watch my tier list if you want to see that in detail, what I think some classes need to be stronger in. But also what I think for balance changes and how to make PvP more fun would be that they find some way to have skill-based counterplay. So there used to be more abilities that you could use sometimes only in a specific situation to counterplay something. And nowadays it's just kind of a DPS spam fest, to be honest. So if they can find a way to have some skill-based counterplay, that would be good. Next big thing to make PvP more fun, they need to fix some of the maps, performance, fix a lot of the bugs. I mean, the desync in this game nowadays is crazy, especially in the newer war zones. They seem to be worse. If you compare the Van Dien hardball to the original hardball, there is a lot more lag. Also, since they migrated to the cloud servers, the ping has become unstable for some people, not for me personally, but some people have commented that on the forum as well. So whatever is happening there also needs improvement. Of course, when it comes to performance, I know that they are largely tied to the choices that were made in the past when it comes to the hero engine. But also some of the things they added that no one was really asking for, like new animation for affliction that is like flicking all over the map now. Some of that like really just needs to be fixed. So I think performance would be at least slightly better if some of the worst offenders when it comes to animations and such would be fixed, such as Plasma Probe or let's say Stormwatch for the Lightning Sorcerer. Then when it comes to the maps and the map rotation, honestly at this point just remove Odessen. Or, I guess some people enjoy it, but for me personally, I think the map is simply too big. So maybe give everyone a 50% movement speed buff out of combat or something like that. Another guy was also commenting on the forums to say that, if one team scores in hardball, why not open the respawn? I haven't thought about that too much, but I thought it could be an interesting suggestion and maybe allow for some more comebacks or something. Because hardball can be quite streaky, and if you score one goal, then usually it's easier to follow up and score another goal. Next, and these 2 points are combined. So people also play PvP, not just because the core game is fun, but they play it as an outlet for their competitive side, let's say. And of course for rewards. I mean, you can combine those two, right? In my opinion, PvP is not a birthday party for kids where you hand out participation trophies to everyone. That is not saying that you cannot have any participation-based rewards, but at the same time, I think they really need to give people something to compete for, and the removal of ranked was a huge mistake as well. Let's talk, for example, about the Warzone stats, right? So you have these stats here. They introduced them with the PvP revamp. There's this battle record. You can even filter it for arena and war zones. But why does this not reset at the beginning of a new PvP season? Or, maybe even have it stay, but then why can I not filter to show only the stats from the last season to see if I improved, for example, right? So this one really needs some improvement as well. Also, the stats which they have in here is weird. Like my average damage doesn't really say anything. Maybe my matches are super long, so my damage will be higher. Or maybe my matches are super short because I kill everyone in one global cooldown. Then my average damage doesn't really mean anything. What you should show here is, stats like the average DPS, the average HPS, or the, damage taken per second. So yeah, the stats need a rework as well. And then once you fix the stats, you can have some performance-based rewards. And maybe you can do that in the way that, if you want people to care about actually winning a war zone for the objectives, maybe you should incentivize wins. Because I don't need to finish my weekly anymore. I have all the gear I want. Wins don't bring me anything except to boost my win rate, which, to be honest, I don't really care about at all. But maybe you just make it more interesting for people to win games, right? So what do people want? I don't know. Some people like achievements. So give them some nice, interesting new PvP achievements that you get from, let's say, winning 10 war zones in a row or something like this, right? Or maybe you just reintroduce leaderboards where you can compare your win rate in the current season to the win rate of other teams. I also think that PvP titles and flares, removing those with the removal of ranked was a huge mistake. So you gotta bring those back because people really seem to like that stuff. And the final thing that I would mention is that The new player experience to PvP is also really bad, because the gearing is still way too complicated, particularly if you're new to the game. The lack of a bolster for augments is a big barrier to entry, because if you're missing augments, you're missing a lot of stats compared to a fully geared PvPer. And, you know, if you're a new player, you're probably going to have a hard time in endgame PvP anyway. But there's also already premates that have better gear than you with tacticals in the level 75 bracket and below. So make it easier for new players to pick up the game. Explain a little bit, maybe via some tutorials, how PvP actually works, because that is very basic in the current game. But yeah, mostly fix gearing. And that's it for today, guys. That's my little rant. Hopefully some of these points can be addressed by Broadsword in one of the next patches. Again, I mostly wanted to start a discussion. I'm not saying I have the perfect solution for all of these problems. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on it. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you guys think should be improved to make PvP and the game in general more fun. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.